go up, and I'll start with the first one.
Thanks. So resilience to me, as far as I see it, on a personal level, is about acquiring skills and re-educating myself for new realities. Now, so that's really about education. So that brings me on to thinking about the children. I don't have children myself, but when I look at my nephews and nieces, they're in 20 years they're going to be in their early 20s. Now, as I understand it, a lot's going to change in 20 years, and they do need to be acquiring their skills as children. So my question is, do you think the subjects that are being taught at schools are appropriate, the kind of traditional maths, history and so on? I'm sure everybody still needs all those, but should there be more practical skills being taught at schools? And if so, what kind of vehicle do you think there should be for that?
Okay, and Marion, your question? We'll take 3 questions and then... no? Okay, and there was a question over here.
Sorry. I was just wondering when we're going to stop having these kind of conferences and start having conferences where we're actually all talking with each other and putting these ideas into action. Like, yes, it's good that they were talking about these resilient ideas, but when are we going to start facilitating ourselves to have conferences and that actually act on things instead of just talking and talking and talking about these?
I think, yeah.
And one more.
Well, firstly, I'm with Claire in that I really think we need to, what will bring people to join us is the positive. I use the word heart. I think that it's really urgent that we bring the vision of the right and the left brain, the connectedness, our sense of knowing our impact on the world. For me, resilience is potentially about thriving, and for me that is about us finding a way to optimize our connectedness. So through I like synergy, but the notion of community weaving is one manifestation, asset mapping. This whole thing about how do we bring our resources, our skills, all that we have between us is extraordinary. And so that idea so my question is, what do we know about really maximizing our most effective practice? What is happening at the moment for helping us all learn as quickly as we can the stuff that's really working, and for bringing alive our connection so that when we come to these meetings we can easily see where the conversations lie that we can be having that will help us to ignite our local communities with some heart and some vision and some...
Create a network where we can look geographically at the whole country so that everyone is being inclusive in the resilience.
Sorry, I got distracted.
Write them all down on a blackboard.
On a blackboard. Yes, well, the workshop should start in the corner to actually make some paint and create a board and make it black. So we had 3 things. I'm afraid I didn't. I got distracted. I got interrupted by what you said. Can you summarise what you said? Making it more inclusive. Was that the soundbite?
How could we do it? Make it more accessible.
These guys should. I didn't. Yeah. And the other one was about we need to focus on practical skills at school, which very much relates to a film we showed the other night called Schooling the World, which really is making the way we educate our kids very unresilient. Stop talking about it and get on and do things and be more connected. So who wants to pick out of that bag of topics?
If I could just say something about us all sitting here talking and not doing. Speaking personally, I've come here and due to the activities I've engaged in while I've been here, I've come up with one idea of not completely, but of significantly changing my teaching practice, and another, I've made a connection with the person who I'm possibly going to work with in future. And so, I think that's a very good time. Very, very good use of my time actually being here. So I don't think we need to be ashamed of all sitting around and talking and drinking lots of chai, because it can be very productive.
Can I say
but
something?
it is a very interesting thing, because as a teacher, I had no control over the results of my actions. I teach people, and then they go away, and whether my work has any utility whatsoever is entirely in the hands of those people who go away. And it's a very strange position to be in. I'm not quite sure what that's got to do with resilience, but it occurred to me.
So, resilience in education, I think, is the theme.
And if I can just address the question of education for young children. One of the wonderful things about being here is seeing children as young as 2 just rushing off unsupervised, it's probably someone, if they're as young as that, it's probably someone keeping an eye on them from a distance. And, having this ability to sort of get a bottle and fill it full of soil and then sort of turn it upside down and see the soil come out again. Rush up and down on their bikes, all that kind of thing. And I almost think that's more important than what they learn at school. Compared with the children whose parents are terrified of paedophiles round every corner and won't let them out of the house, and they sit there playing this game of catching bass or whatever it is. Aren't aware of the fact that there are actually minnows in the stream 100 yards away from their house. So, it's not a complete answer to the point you raised, but I think it's a very important one. I think every child should have that opportunity, and anyone here who's got a child who is enjoying the freedom that you have on this very safe site, I applaud you.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about your point where you said about us maybe all discussing this in a more kind of circular way, and I think that there are some really good technologies from the emerging culture of collaboration which can be used for this, things like Open Space and World Cafe, and effective resilience coordination. That's a really good technique for using that. But my experience of the resilience conversation is actually it's kind of 90% action and very small amounts of conversation, and most of the conversation is practically orientated. So I don't really think that the critique that it were just all talking is really that valid.
Transition town movement, slowly catchy monkey kind of thing. But from what you guys are saying is we don't have time to be slowly. We're not going to go to councils and pressure them to do this. I think, maybe we've hit that mark where we now need to start being a bit more forceful about these alternative ideas, and I just don't feel like we have the time to go slowly.
I think certainly on that, in transition events, we really very much try and get away from the idea that people sit at the front and are the experts, and sort of everybody else asks them questions. And if you ever come to the Transition Network conference, it's not a conference even in any sense of the word conference. We couldn't think of anything better to call it, but it's all done with open space and workshops and World Cafe and that thing of getting it. So it's very much exactly like you're saying. So at the end of the event, you go home, everybody's ideas have been thrown in, you go home with those ideas to take them back to where you are, and that's integral really, I think, in what we do. I think in terms of education, I often say I think we have become the most useless generation to ever walk the planet, and I think we've designed an education system that is designed. You couldn't design one to maximise uselessness more effectively, really. And I think there is a huge role for people leaving school knowing what all of their hands are for, not just their thumbs, and knowing how to fish, not just on their thing. But I think as well, alongside that, we need an education system that gives young people the practical skills. They should be able to leave school at 16 knowing how to grow 10, 20 vegetables to a basic level of proficiency, understanding kilowatts, understanding energy literacy. And I also think that one of the key things that we should be giving young people living school is the critical thinking ability as we enter an historically unprecedented energy crisis, that we give young people the critical thinking skills to be able to differentiate between, and I don't wish to rubbish any of the workshops that are here, but the sort of the advocates of free energy, and that there are things in the law of thermodynamics that are a conspiracy, and that actually a guy came up to me at the end of one talk I gave and said, there's a man, I've just been reading online about a man in Australia who's made a car that runs on water. What does that do to all this peak oil stuff you're talking about? And I said, can you think of a more socially and ecologically irresponsible invention in Australia, which is suffering massively from water stress, than a car that runs on water? Surely a car that runs on petrol is actually infinitely better than that. But I think having those kind of critical thinking skills, so you can discern between things that are actually going to be useful tools we can carry forward with us and scale up, and sort of nonsense is really important. And what was it? Oh, and in terms of networking and how we share these ideas, that's something we try really, really hard to do in transition networking. It's what we've really tried to design it to do. So to gather in those stories, put them out. So if something happens in one place, if Transition Chelmsford come up with some really cool idea or event, or something happens there that's a really exciting story, how do we get that story out to everybody as quickly as possible? So we try and do that through the films and through the conference and the blogs and the various things.
You say you've got a small team, but you've got a network that's vast. All kinds of systemic influences who, we could be designing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I said it was a small team in response to the question of why don't you go and lobby government on this, that, and the other.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Our network is vast if we just find an intelligent way to mobilise it, because between us we know everybody.
But I think we have found an intelligent way of mobilising. If you look at all the amazing stuff that's happening and the things we're not doing and that stuff, all the stories that I talked about in the talk, we don't do that. That's all what people are doing.
A big part of what you're talking about with education is actually to do with fun. We want young people and children to be able to actually feel really drawn into this transition and this education, which is vital. And to do that, I feel like we live in a very stimulated society, and the way to access it is through fun, to make it enjoyable, to ignite that passion and sense of inclusion. And with education, I think it'd be really great to start using more workshops and lots of excitement, and really conjuring that from young people, because I do find that transition town lacks the youth element. I found personally, it may be different for you, but that's my experience. And I think we really need to be engaging our next generation, really.
Can I just briefly address that? Google Moving Sounds. They do fantastic work in schools that is totally about the horrendous challenges that face us, and is totally fun.